Hi, everybody. Welcome to my first LinkedIn Live. This is the inaugural event, and I really welcome everyone for joining today. And this is going to be first of many weekly events that take place every Wednesday, hopefully at 4 o'clock. And today I have decided to talk about the metaverse and talk about the metaverse around communication and how that could be or will in fact change the way we communicate with each other for generations to come. But there are three things, or three component parts that I want to talk about in terms of communication. One of which is the internal communication that we have with our friends and our colleagues in our workplace. The second is the customer communication, probably the most important and powerful one. And the third element I want to talk about is actually the borders that we have around communication, or the limitations of communication, and what the metaverse is going to do to really empower that. And then towards the end, I may have three gotchas that you may want to consider and start thinking about as we move forward. But again, I really welcome your time today. It shouldn't take too long, maybe about 15 minutes, unless I start to ramble. And those that know me know I can ramble on for a long time. But again, hopefully about 10, 15 minutes. And if you want to connect with me afterwards, please reach out on LinkedIn. You know, my email address is down below. I think people do that, don't they? So here, click on this, click on that. But my details are below. And again, if you want to have an offline chat, again, or follow me on Twitter or things like that. But I'll follow up with you later. But let's get into the three core parts. And the first thing I want to consider, or for you to consider, is internal communications. How the metaverse is actually going to revolutionize our internal communications. But we have to go back a bit. We have to think about where communication comes from. I'm not going to go back hundreds of years and how early businesses were doing that, because it was all horse and cart and pigeon and snail mail, all kind of stuff. I want to go back to maybe 10, 15 years in your mind. And internal communications, internal meetings were very physical. You had to be present to get the message. And they were very one directional. You had to be in person, and very often you were receiving a message from one person or it's a one-to-many environment. So not very interactive, not very powerful, certainly not very communicative. And many people probably just weren't engaged. Now kind of come forward a bit, come forward about 10 years, or the last 10 years. There's become a lot more digital, the way that we communicate internally, but they're still very binary in the human experience. And it's limited to a little window in a box on your screen, a window on your PC. But now when you go forward another 10 to 15 years, and now sit back and close your eyes, just imagine this. You're never being told to go to another Teams meeting or another Zoom meeting ever again. You never had to click the link, join my audio, and join with 50 other people trying to get the little square in the window. Imagine if that didn't exist. Imagine that every company meeting was on a beach in the summer, and you could feel the warmth of the sun, and you were dipping your toes into the warm water, even though it's cold and miserable outside. Or imagine every team meeting you had ended up the social ever leaving your home. You were there, but you weren't really there. There was a physical digital representation of you, and maybe it's only your voice that was being physical. Many people, I think, when they start thinking around the metaverse, are struggling to find the really strong use cases for it. And for those who are kind of honing in on the metaverse, and really have a digital kind of environment, digital place, like an art gallery or a classroom. And for me, these are all brilliant. The fact will bring new elements of learning into our dictionary, into our vocab that we haven't thought about yet. But for the metaverse to get really mainstream, I think we need to be thinking horizontally in our traditional ways of thinking versus vertically. And today, it actually reminds me, and thinking about the metaverse and in this kind of point in moment of time where we are with technology, it does take me back to the 90s when I was living and working in New York, when we created a very disruptive video conferencing technology. And back then, internal video communication between London, New York, Tokyo, wherever it might be, was very bad. It was like that robotics dancer. It was terrible. Sorry if you're getting a little bit of flicking. I'm not sure if I've got some broadband connections or whatever, but hopefully I'll just carry on. But people were making these massive investments just to be able to communicate with teams across the planet, and it was terrible. Our video codec at the time, back then it was a piece of hardware, it wasn't even software at the time, delivered TV quality video communications right on your PC. It was truly revolutionary, but it required a piece of network behind it to make it work. But within about 20 years, people an internet problem, so I do apologize for that. I'm just saying that at the point when we created video conferencing technology, the difference between then and now is that our technology had a real powerful use case to fix. I think the metaverse is still searching for those use cases to make it mainstream. But I do think communication and internal communication, particularly, is just one of those very momentous use cases that will help drive adoption. After all, listen, let's get real. We'll soon have to start getting used to a world without mobile phones. They just will no longer exist. So what's going to replace it? It will be the metaverse without any question of doubt. So I think you should be thinking around, when you're thinking about the metaverse, come down a few levels and think about how we can deploy or actually find very powerful use cases to bring people in, our employees, our colleagues. I read a very interesting article the other day when someone was talking about to get some momentum in the marketplace that we should be having board of directors communicating. And I've been a board of director myself. And that's the wrong place to start. You know, that's a very small group of people. Yes, they're globally dispersed, but we need to be finding use cases where there's masses of people that can really benefit from the metaverse in a very, very short space of time. So the second thing I want to consider is that of the customer communication. To this, I have a very simple point. If you're late to the metaverse game in relation to engaging with customers, new or existing, you'll never be able to catch up. You will never be able to catch up. We've all seen and witnessed, I'm not sure if you have, but if you haven't, it's a very kind of iconic book called Crossing the Chasm by Geoffrey Moore, one of the first books I read when I got into technology. And he talks about the adoption curve, and he was talking about early adopters, early mainstream, laggards, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, where the players waiting to enter the market after the market makers have done their job of generating demand and creating this wonderful innovation, these bigger competitors come late into the market and are able to squash the innovators by pure acquisition or just having global reach. I mean, I think the times are changing. We all remember, well, I certainly do, when Bill Gates refused to accept that the web browser would ever be a thing. Well, I remember it. I mean, I was around at the time. He didn't believe that Netscape or Mosaic, probably words of a certain generation, you don't know what these companies are, but these were the early iconic browsers of the time. And Bill Gates never thought there'd be something that users would catch on to. How wrong was he? And I remember, and I was in New York at the time, the amount of money and resources he had to spend to catch up. Yes, ultimately he dominated, but at what cost? And however, I do believe the difference. To believe that metaverse will be different, I think the early innovators in this space are in an absolute unique position to create early stage brand loyalty and keep it and generate more without the threat. Without the threat of acquisition, because they've got the skills and the experience to always be one step ahead in the metaverse. And that's the difference. So I think we're going to see maybe a different adoption curve when it comes to the metaverse. But the metaverse opens up the ability to communicate with customers in such an imaginative and personal way. It's able to take your brand, your product, your service to amazing new heights of sensory engagement. I mean, think about it. I mean, I was talking to someone this morning who was telling me that one of his colleagues or friends is an electrician who's now doing videos on TikTok and getting lots of business from it. I mean, this is kind of quite simple video communication for customer engagement. It's a video recording. Here's how to do it. But the amount of business it's getting is fantastic. The customer in the metaverse can explore so much about a company that marketing departments or advertising agencies, even 2 years ago, were not even able to think about. So customer communications is going to be a paramount essence for driving your use of the metaverse. So I think about internal communication number one, and think about customer communications in the second instance. The third and final one is communication borders. Yep, there are things called communication borders. You may not think them or believe it, but communication does have this kind of limitation of border, or what you might call a communication boundary. And so traditional digital communications has extreme limits on it. And it's not able to really invoke a lot of sensory involvement. And I actually think the limitation of the sensory involvement of today's or current digital technology is very damaging to a whole generation. It's actually making less able to become socially aware. And when I talk about socially aware, I don't mean like a social platform like Facebook or TikTok, whatever. I'm talking about real human sensory social engagement. The reason is because they're so reliant on such a very limited level of sensory interaction between a mobile phone and the eyeballs. And this is very, very limiting. If you think about it, the eyeballs is only a receiver. Human eyes don't actually see anything. They just receive something. Like ears don't actually hear, they just receive. So when we're looking at digital communication today, like video conferencing, like we're on today, for example, this is a non-metaverse, kind of like an organic kind of way to communicate, where you are receiving what I'm sending you and you're hearing what I'm sending you through just that whole motion of receiving. And this is where the borders of the current communications are set. So what will the metaverse do to change sensory communication? Well, I think it's very, very simple. I think those of you that have been on the metaverse journey for a while will know the metaverse will simply is unlimited, and it locks every sense, whether it's actually being used or not. Yes, my friend, there are many metaverse experiences in the virtual world where the act of smelling takes place even though there's nothing to smell. The act of smelling can take place in the metaverse even though there's nothing actually physical to smell. In the metaverse, by bringing in virtual reality, augmented reality into the metaverse, the senses are so heightened that the brain fills in the sensory gap. So imagine being able to communicate with every employee, every prospect. Imagine engaging with customers using every sense the human body has. But just think about that. It's quite a revolutionary statement to make. In fact, it's so profound. I love to meditate. And I love to meditate on this topic alone. Imagine that. Imagine what I could do for my business in terms of driving amazing new revenue streams, having new marketing campaigns, having new advertising campaigns in the metaverse, because I can just tap into a massive amount of sensory involvement through the fact that I'm using this thing called the metaverse, and I'm incorporating a bit of augmented reality and a bit of virtual reality. But how cool is that? It will change everything. So I know I'm rambling on a bit, I tend to do, and I've asked you to imagine for a while, think about these things, consider internal communications. I want you to consider customer communications. I want to think about unlocking your boundaries of communication. Start thinking of those three things, because the metaverse is even though it's in its infancy, it's been here for for a long while, and it's here to stay, no question about it. And there are many more, much cleverer people than me thinking about the metaverse and how it can react to us. But think about this, just think about it and how real this is. And not only will the metaverse be the largest technology by revenue, but also the fastest adoption, because it brings together all the facets of current technology in one place. It brings together virtual reality. It brings together augmented reality. It brings together blockchain. It brings together haptics. It brings together creativity and much, much more. And in fact, and they won't believe it, but my almost 30-year career in technology, it's the first time that I'm witnessing a technology revolution that is truly only limited to the imagination of its creators and the users. To me, the first time the metaverse is actually only limited to the imagination of its creators and its users. What a great place to be. And communication is a powerful thread, I think, that will transform the well-being of our colleagues, the well-being of our customers, and just unleash and unlock creativity beyond realms. I can't wait. My daughter's 16. I can't wait for her in 10 years' time now, thinking what jobs are going to be available in the metaverse. It's just fascinating to think. But what are the gotchas? And what you should be thinking about when considering the metaverse? Well, number one, I want you to relax. This is not a new dimension. This technology has been around for a long time. So don't, pardon me, take a bit of water. So don't be scared about thinking this is a new technology that you have to apply lots of skills and resources in-house to try and figure out what it is. It's out there already, so don't worry about that. So this is not a new dimension. The technology has been around for a long time. To feel comfortable about getting into if you're not doing any proof of concept, you're not doing any kind of early stage business planning around it, start. Because if you're worried about the technology not working for you, that's just a myth. Second thing is you've got to consider your metaverse infrastructure and compute power, which is my point. My next point. Think about interoperability between your environments and your networks. Point three, I think you've got to consider the end game up front about what the metaverse can engender operationally for your business. And this kind of goes into the first 2 points. One of them, don't worry about the technology. Think about how it's going to work. I mean, those are pretty obvious. But with the metaverse, because you've got to come in now, you shouldn't be really waiting. Think about the end game right up front. Think about what it can do for your business in terms of sales, marketing, training, employee welfare, production, and every aspect of your business. Start thinking about that today. So, I know I'm going on a bit, running a bit of time, but in summary, listen, I apologize that I maybe not captured everything I want to capture, because the metaverse is still unlocking and unleashing so many great use cases. But in summary, listen, the metaverse is here to stay. I really want to try and urge everyone to start thinking around what it means for your business if you're thinking about it as a communication platform. I mean, how long will it take? I mean, I had a question I was going to ask. I know Keisha's on, and she'll kill me for not doing it because I've got these banners and everything else like that. But my question was, do you think the metaverse will replace video conferencing? The traditional Teams and Zoom meetings. And now I'm thinking, it's not the question of whether do you think it will replace it? It's when do you think it will replace it? So the metaverse is no question, it's here to stay, and it's coming. I also think there's so many great innovators coming into the market today that will continue to push user experience and transform business applications like never before. So I think we're all sitting on this wonderful transition, this wonderful inflection point in the sector of technology like we've never seen before. People of my age, 55 years old, and I'm thinking I hadn't seen anything like this before at all. And I've always been at the front end of technology. I've always been early adopter. I've been so enthralled by what it can do, but it still needs that use case. It still needs everyone to be thinking about how we can deploy it right across our enterprise. If you're limiting it to a particular division like sales or marketing or advertising or production or supply chain, you're not going to maximize the benefit. So think about it up front. Try and encapsulate the entire operating model of your business. Start to think actually, what is your new metaverse operating model? Your mum, right? I'm just about to make that phrase right now. Your mum, your metaverse operating model. So think about that. So listen, it's almost 4:15. We've had some great comments coming in. Thank you, Ron, for saying that replacing video conferencing now within 2 weeks. Market release plan. Oh, great. Well done. So thanks for that. Look forward to hopefully seeing you next Wednesday at 4 o'clock again. And actually next week, I'm actually going to be talking about what you need to be doing, thinking about creating a scope for a good VR project. How do you get a good virtual reality project off the ground? What you should be thinking about for the business case? What you think about returns on investments? How do you actually start? What are the benefits? So that's going to be next week's topic. But again, thank you very much. I welcome all your participations today. See you next week, 4 o'clock, same place, same time. Take care. Cheers. Bye.